I appreciate everybody for coming out on this cold, wet, rainy, gross night. Thank you for coming, and good to see some familiar faces and some new faces. We've also got a number of folks joining us on Zoom as well. You can wave to the camera here. Hello, Zoomers. So again, I'm Cody Touchette with Caliber Home Loans. This is our house. Thanks for coming down, and we've got some great guest speakers tonight on the panel. So we're going to introduce ourselves, and then we'd like to go around the room and have you introduce yourself as well, and then we'll give an opportunity for anybody on Zoom to introduce themselves as well. So again, Cody Touchette with Caliber Home Loans. I am a real estate investor just like you guys. I have a number of different properties and a number of different locations. We've got our states here somewhere, Cole. I don't know if you want to put that slide up. I'm personally invested. I started here in Washington buying what I knew locally. And then as time wore on, it was harder and harder to find a decent deal here. Something that, come on in guys, just doing introductions now. So it's harder and harder to find things that made sense. And so I started chasing Jennifer around the country and investing in some of the markets that they brought together. So now I'm in Washington, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and Idaho, and looking for a short-term rental in Arizona now as well, because I just spent 5 days in the desert, and it's so much different down there right now. So again, thanks for coming, and I'll go down the panel here. We'll have Jesse introduce himself next.
Okay, you want to?
Yeah, go for it.
Hi everyone, I'm Jesse Kreun. Well, you can see the states that I'm in. I've got 28 units total. You know, I live here in the Seattle region on the east side, and you know, I work full time and have been doing this part time since about 2015.
Okay. Hi, I'm Donovan Eberling. I kind of took a big step forward in 2020 and started from just having cash from previous investments all on hand, and did a slew of investments throughout the last 2 years. In terms of out of state, I have a 10 unit in Ohio, outside the Dayton area, and an 8 unit in Tennessee. And then have done a lot of in-state, off-market, and on-market investments.
Yeah, my name is Jesse Kreun. I currently own in Texas and Wisconsin, trying to close an Airbnb right now in Chandler, Arizona. I've owned previously in Spokane area and Cincinnati, Ohio. So I work full time like the other Jesse, and do this kind of on the side, trying to make this my full-time gig at some point here soon. It's taken a lot longer than I wish it would.
Right on. Great. If you wouldn't mind, so far.
My name is Kathy Fleming, and I live here in Everett. Right now, I am flipping a house in Lake Stevens. Should be on the market Monday to get more money to start investing in real estate.
Awesome.
I'm Sean Newton. I've got 28 units total, Washington, Tennessee, Texas, and Florida. Working on 3 refinances, pulling that equity out so it's not lazy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cody. I'm also addicted to syndications. So not everybody likes that, but
That's a new group.
I can't. I can't stop. They're just so good right now. And possibly a development deal with some raw land. So everything's happening.
Super fun.
Scott Haggerty. I actually work in for Cody's group here, and this is my first meeting, and I'm hoping to pursue some investments.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Great.
that's kind of about it, and learn a little bit more. So
I'm Dustin Erlacher, and I also work on the Touchette team.
Stack the room.
There you go. I have 13 doors, 9 in Spokane and 4 in Oklahoma. And I just put an offer in on another one in Oklahoma today. So we'll see how that goes.
My name is Taj Sukija. I'm a realtor for, I think, almost 14 years here in Washington, and I'm licensed in California also. So that's why I'm here, because obviously Washington has got to a place where the ROI is not so good. So I'm doing a development project here in Washington, but for getting more, I wanted to get more into commercial and get 5 unit plus. So that's why I'm here. And I've met Jesse a few times, but I never knew he was into investment. I would have done it earlier. So, but coming here to learn and see what state would be a good, I'm kind of inclining towards Arizona. But it would be good to get everybody's opinion and see what people think. So that's why I'm here.
Great.
My name is Mary. I'm also here to learn. Currently own a single family home rental property and just invested in a duplex with a few partners this year. Really looking into commercial properties. You know, I'm still looking around here in Washington, but my next move after here is to go out of state. So I'm hoping to learn from you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'm Monica. We actually went to nursing school together, and that duplex is we joint partnered with another friend on that. So we have that. It's a 2-door, and then I have another single family home in Linwood, so Linwood and Everett, and then I'm looking to do out of state. So just learning that it's something I don't know anything about yet. So just gonna learn how to do that.
Awesome.
I'm Heather Appel, and the last time I was in this room, I think was in 2019, and I didn't have anything. And since December of 2019, I purchased 7 properties, 25 doors, Tennessee, Texas, and Minnesota. Yeah.
Good work.
So, and it's just so funny, like I listening, I'm like, oh, last time I was in this room, like that's totally how I felt.
We're gonna be like next year.
Hopefully, so, and, I mean, a great team and great people to learn from, so.
That's the power of the group, guys. That's pretty awesome.
Very true, that's very true.
Congrats.
Congrats.
My name is Tom Lee. I came to Seattle in 2016. I went to Seattle University to do my master in finance. After my graduation, now I'm working in the real estate in investment and management company. Because I came from China, I just got my work visa last year. So before that, I cannot apply for a loan. So I only trade stock options to generate some cash flow from stock market. Now I'm planning to buy some cash flow multifamily out of state. Because here the number doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, that's my plan. That I just joined this inner circle last month. Yeah. 2 years ago, I came here, but at that time, I'm just do some research. I cannot buy anything. But I'm very excited now. I can start to invest here.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
My name is Eden. The car that I have is the only physical asset that I own. I like investing in struggling businesses, but I'm here to listen, to learn about real estate.
Awesome. Cool.
I'm Ashley, this is Jeremiah, and we are new to all of this, so we're looking in Kansas City area, Clarksville, you know, just kind of looking for something, learning all of the things right now.
Great. Love it.
We're Sean and Tracy O'Brien. We are constantly learning, but we have 49 units in 6 states. So we're definitely, we like the out-of-state model, but we're.
Well, come on up.
Yeah, he can have my seat.
We're in the back in case Connor starts getting loud.
Fair enough.
Thanks.
Connor probably knows more about real estate than I do.
Well, he certainly will. I love it. That's great. It's good to see you guys too. And for the lovely folks that just walked in, we were just doing around the room and introduce ourselves, name where you're from, and if you have any real estate right now or not.
My name is Amanda. I live in Woodinville, and I don't have anything at the moment.
I'm Robert. I live in Woodinville and Atlanta.
Yeah, good to see you guys again. Thanks for coming. Like Cole, you want to pop up Zoom and see who's ready to say hello on the Zoom?
On the Zoom.
Oh yeah, good turnout on the Zoom. All right. See Diana.
Diana, you want to go first?
I'll kick us off. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana. I'm on the Addicted to ROI team. I am from New Hampshire, which is where I currently am now. I'm visiting home, but I normally live in Hawaii. It's very hard to invest there. So really excited to hear your stories about investing out of state, and was hoping to get into my first property this year. Since it's already mid-November, I don't know if that'll happen, but definitely on my goal list for next year.
Ready for me? Can you guys hear me okay?
Gotcha,
Yep.
yeah.
I did.
Yeah, well, I'm David. I work at Keller Williams in Marysville. I own one duplex in Walla Walla, and I'm very eager to buy a fourplex by the end of the year. That's my goal. And I'm very appreciative of the videos I've been listening to that Jennifer has made. And also I've been getting a lot of help from the people on the ROI Facebook site. So I'm very appreciative for the tremendous amount of support I've been getting on my goal.
Awesome. Great to meet you. See, I see Reinhardt's got it unmuted.
Yeah, I'll go. My name is Reinhard Curzon, and I'm from the Seattle area, currently living in Colorado Springs. But until this year, my wife and I had 30 units in Washington. Since we're here in Colorado, we bought a fourplex, and then we got 14 units in Oklahoma City. So total 48 units over 3 states, and looking to expand and hear your guys' stories. So thanks for sharing.
Awesome. Let's see. Maybe I should call on people. It makes it a little easier. Dina, I see Dina. You want to unmute and give a little intro there?
Yes, hello, everybody. I am Dina. I'm the general manager here at Agents Invest, Addicted to ROI. I myself have 32 doors, have been investing for approximately 9 years, actively 5 years, and the last 4 years we've been just kind of enjoying reaping the benefits of having rental income coming in. And then I enjoy working with the team here at Agents Invest and Addicted to ROI and Cody, and helping everybody else achieve the same kind of financial freedom.
Woo. Dina and has retired dentist from Boeing after many, many years, and now they're living the good life over on the east side of the mountains.
Right.
I see Eric. Erica, you mind unmuting and giving a little introduction? There you go.
I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams in Bothell, and we have Shani and I, my husband, have acquired 3 properties, and we are interested in another short-term rental. We have one right now, and we are also open to house hacks. And we are opening ourselves up to out-of-state investing now as well.
All right, I like it. Let's see. Dana, looks like you're unmuted.
Yeah, I've got, just started in May. I've got 2 properties, 5 units, and I'm hoping to acquire a couple short-term rentals here shortly.
Awesome, good deal. Mary Lee, get you to say hello.
Hi, my name's Mary. I have 2 properties / 3 doors plus an Airbnb, and I've done a flip.
Awesome. Mark, I see you're unmuted. Can you chat?
Yeah, I can. Thank you. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. My name is Mark. I live here in Sammamish, Washington. I just started a couple months ago. I bought my first house. I'm focusing more on long-term rentals, single-family homes. Just bought my first one in Jacksonville, Florida in August. Got a renter in there, so good to go, and I'm looking forward to the next and the next. But yeah, just getting started.
Awesome, good deal. I'm gonna maybe try taking it from the top, what I see. Stephanie, you mind popping in there? All right.
Oh, hi, I'm Stephanie. Oh,
Two
there's 2 Stephanies, sorry.
I was Stephanie with the camera on, okay.
Stephanie, I'm a real estate agent as well. I run between Leavenworth and the Bothell area. I currently have 4 short-term rentals. One of them is Airbnb. The others are focused on more executive long-term stays. Looking out of state right now. My husband's down in Arizona, hopefully scouting out something down there. We want to do a short-term rental in that area as well, because we have a a daughter and some grandkids down there, but definitely looking to get out of state.
Sweet.
And currently all my my Airbnbs and short-term rentals are in Washington.
Okay, great. Liam, how about you?
Hey, I'm Liam. I'm in Wenatchee. Just spoke with Dina today for my first conversation. So I'm a complete rookie, no properties, but interested in multifamily rentals and maybe a vacation short-term rental as well.
Adelina, I think you're next on our list. Looks like you're ready.
Hi, yes, I'm Adelina Dragic. I was invited by Don Chase. He's my lender. I'm also a real estate agent, and well, my office is on Mercer Island, and I had some condos that I owned that I've been renting on and off really since 2006. So I have some experience with that. And right now, I don't own anything. Well, I own my condo that I live in Mercer Island, but I just help my parents manage their Airbnb, which is like mine and theirs. And I'm just looking for education for clients of mine, and also possibly to get into this, maybe investing again, because my last rental I sold in right before the pandemic. And I was actually glad I did. So my condo rental. So that's me. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. How about Danielle? Hear from you.
Hi, I'm Danielle Glick, and I currently live in New Zealand, but I'm a US citizen looking to move back next year. So I was looking to move into my first rental property. But I just got some bad news today that because I've been earning income in New Zealand for the last few years, I probably won't qualify for my own mortgage. So now I'm looking more for partner investors or to be a property manager for some Airbnbs so I can start earning that US income again.
Gotcha. Okay, we might have some for you. You should reach out.
Okay.
And then Stephanie Schultz, you get a second chance here. Sorry about earlier.
That's okay. Stephanie Schultz. We are actually closing on our first two duplexes in Wisconsin, thanks to Cody and his team. That closes tomorrow, actually. So excited for that and looking forward to learning more and continuing our out-of-state investing.
Love it. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to call on you because there's some people without their cams on. So if you can chat, great, let us know. How about Brian Spring? I see you, Brian.
Oh, he said he can't talk, but he just put a note in the
Fair
chat. He said he's in Kirkland, Washington, has 2 quads in Clarksville since July 2020, created the Addicted to ROI group, and is looking for his next.
Awesome.
While looking for his next long-term rental, he's invested in 3 syndications, 2 self-storage units, and 1 value-add 236 unit in Phoenix. He said this is a great tribe, learn and take action.
Power user, I like it. Good to see you, Brian. And then Ryan pops in there coming in hot. Ryan, can we introduce yourself there?
Hey, yeah. Hey, guys. Ryan Thurston, been a long time member of the group. Actually, my wife is usually here, but she's on a trip right now. We're both really excited to be a part of this and to hear about everybody's stories. We have a little bit over 20 units in our portfolio. Love doing this because I have a W-2 job on the side, probably with everybody else. It's very similar here. I think Cody has like half the loans on our properties, so I gotta be nice to Cody. Love hearing the stories. I just had a long day of work today, and for me, this is motivation. I want to continue to do this for a lot of the reasons that everyone's already talked about here, and look forward to hearing everyone's story.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Lily, you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, hi. My first virtual meetup, honestly, ever. I was looking for a real estate group in the Washington area for a while now, so glad to connect. I'm based out of Kirkland, and I'm invested in Texas at the moment, and debating if I want to expand in that area or branch into other states.
Great. All right. Well, Michael. There he is. We see you, but you're on mute still.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael. Pretty new to real estate, looking to purchase a first property either as a house hack or a long-term rental in either Texas or Arizona. Right now, really just getting a feel for attending as many events as I can, webinars, meeting new people, and then trying to figure things out from there.
Awesome. Great. Well, welcome, Michael. Igor, I see your picture. Are you there?
Yes, sir. Cody, good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy.
I'm Igor Pechkovsky. I'm a real estate broker here at Windermere Bellevue Commons. Over time, built some specialty with working with developers, builders here locally, and been in the Bellevue bubble for a while. And now learn how to make money while working and trying to learn how to make good money while not working. And what's the rest of the country look like outside of Bellevue. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to learning from you guys. And we got our primary residence here in Bellevue this year, and looking to put more dollars towards real estate in years to come, and exploring other markets right now.
Great. Awesome. Christina.
Yeah, hi all. I live in Michigan, in between Detroit and Ann Arbor. We currently own our house. We're thinking about either 1031 exchanging it or selling or renting it out in the next probably 6 months. We just went under contract this week on 2 houses we're going to flip. And also, once we either 1031 or rent our current house, we're planning to house hack and hopefully a triplex or a 4-unit, but we'll take a duplex if that's what we can get.
All right, perfect. And I think Susan, you're the last one on the list. Are you there?
Hi, hi, it's Susan. So I'm in Tacoma, and I'm a brand new investor. I just got my first investment property this summer in North Tacoma, and so I am doing a BRRRR method on that. I am interested in multifamily, like a small apartment complex, somewhere in between like 16 and 60 units, something like that.
Awesome.
So that's it. Brand new.
Okay, sweet. I think we got them all. Yeah. Well, you don't have a second page there, do you?
There's a second page.
Oh my gosh, second page. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Well, Christina Oaks put in the chat. David and Christina Oaks, 1 long-term rental in Washington, considering selling it to invest out of state, and they're here to learn.
Okay, great. Wow, second page. We don't have a third page, do we, Cole?
Well, you've got 54 people in here. So.
Oh, we do have a third page.
Yeah,
Okay, we've got a ways to go then. Okay. So nobody else has their cameras on. So if you are there and you'd like to introduce yourself, why don't you turn your camera on so I can call on you? I know Jeff Harding, so I'll give Jeff a shout out. Jeff, there, Jeff?
Hey, yeah, Cody. How's it going?
Awesome. Yeah, good, man.
Good. Yeah, I'm Jeff Harding. I'm up to 43 units now. Invested in Washington for the last 19 years. I just started out of state this year. So far, I'm in Iowa and South Carolina, and picked up 19 units through Agents Invest.
Awesome. There you go. Let's see, go back, Cole. All right. Jorge, I'm not sure how do I say your name.
Jorge,
there you go.
how's it going, guys? My name is Jorge. I live in Issaquah, and I've been wholesaling for about 2.5 years. And I wanna invest out of state. I wanna start, buying some rentals, long-term and short-term. And I'm still trying to decide what market to go into. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say, what advice you guys are willing to give me.
Awesome. Okay. Cool. Well, we do want to keep going, but I would love that anybody else that is interested in introduce themselves, and I would say, jump on that right now, or we'll get moving on to what's next. I see another cam on. Ben, you want to say something?
Hey, yeah, my name's Ben. I'm from Northern Colorado. I'm in construction and have managed a lot of flips and want to get into building a rental property portfolio. This is my wife, Rachel.
Hi, we have money burning a hole in our pockets, and we want to figure out a way to invest it out of state.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome. I know the feeling. Okay, cool. Back it up. Cool. Let's see. Yeah. Feel free to pipe in if you got some, if you want to introduce yourself. Let's see, I don't see any of the cams. All right. Okay, well then, thank you everybody for introducing. I think we'll move on. We'll have some networking time later on as well. Maybe we can get a breakout, Diana, for the Zoomers. Okay, cool. We'll move on to our panel here. And again, we've introduced ourselves, so we'll get going on this. This is kind of meant to be free form, and so Coley will give us the chat questions. I've got a list of some questions that we've got here, but if you guys have questions, man, oh man, raise your hand. Let's find out about it. But let's just maybe start by going down the line and maybe tell us your favorite out-of-state investment that you've done year to date or to date.
To date,
Yeah.
I'll say my first one. That was in Ephrata, Washington, in about.
So not out of state, mind you, but out of area.
I
right?
consider it
It's
out of
kind of
state.
a whole other country.
It's
over
out of
there.
state.
Yeah.
It's out of state. I consider it out of state.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's 3.5 hours away. I've been there once.
Might as well, yeah.
So that was the first one that I went out of area, and I actually talked to Dina about it, and she had properties in that area, and I got to know her property manager, and got pretty comfortable, and then pulled the trigger. So that first one out of the area got me started.
Awesome, good.
Yeah, so my first out-of-state deal is, I guess, in some ways my favorite story, because it's the one that got me started. We couldn't afford California, so I knew the Las Vegas area, and at the bottom of the Great Recession, saw that there was this opportunity to just buy places for less than it would cost to replace them. So it seemed like it had to go up from there at some point.
Right. Yeah.
And so made my first purchase with my then girlfriend, now wife.
So that worked out good.
Yeah, so that worked out. But it definitely, she's still my strongest business partner by far. And yeah, that would be it. And it was partially financed with money I'd won on a game show.
Awesome. Okay, well, I gotta ask, what game show?
Wipeout?
Wipeout. I love Wipeout. Okay, awesome. You didn't wipe out then. Good job.
Oh, many times.
Yes.
I just swam faster from the water.
That's awesome. All right.
My
Jesse.
favorite was probably the one that I'm still working on in Texas. I've got to rehab an old historic building in San Antonio that it's my favorite and my least favorite just because it's taking so long. But the potential of it is just so incredible that I'm excited to see the progress and to see it finally come to fruition, which we're getting very close. So
awesome. Cool. Well, I will answer my own question as well. And mine, similar to you guys, I think one of my, or Jesse anyways, one of my favorites was also not out of state, but it was out of area. And the reason why it was my favorite is because it made me comfortable with buying out of area, right? It's in Auburn, right? And Auburn's not exactly Ephrata, but I live in Bothell, right? And so I remember I bought it at the foreclosure auction, and the first time I went to see it was on a Saturday because I bought it on a Friday. And so I drove down there, met the contractor, met somebody to drill out the locks and, let us into this place that was vacant. And I remember driving down there, and it took me like an hour and 15 minutes on a Saturday morning at 10 a.m., right? Zero traffic. And I remember driving home, I was halfway home, I was like, well, I'm never going back there again, right? Like, I don't want to have to make this drive. And so I made sure I had a solid property manager in the area, and he had solid handy people, I guess I would say. And so that I just didn't have to go down there anymore. I ended up going there one more time, and that was as we were selling it to do a kind of a final walkthrough before we put it on the market. But I really didn't go to that property at all, right? It was an auction buy, needed some fix up. We got it fixed up, we got it rented, and I didn't really play with it at all, right? I didn't go do it. And there was a lot of work to be done on this property, and it was vacant when I bought it. So we had to put 6 new tenants in there. And as time went by, tenants would come and tenants would go, and tenants would, like all those things happened. And I realized that I didn't have to do it, and I didn't have to be there. It didn't need to be a 10-minute drive from my house, right? So that one we paid $368 at auction. I put about 100 into it, and I sold it for 1.15 6 years later, right? So the benefit of buying in our neck of the woods is that appreciation, right? But what I like to do is I like to buy here, appreciate well, and then move that money to the Midwest or the South, right? Where you can get really good cash flow. Leads me into my actual true favorite of right now is the 42 unit building that Jen and I decided I maybe should stop talking about because it was such a killer deal. Everybody wants one, right? But of 42 units, I paid 2.4 at the time for it, rolled that 1031 exchange in from that Auburn property that I was mentioning before into that property. So I bought a property for 368, arguably I had 468 with the repairs. It made money while I owned it, but then I transitioned it into another property. 2.4 purchase. We've basically been funneling all the revenue back into the building for repairs and turns and that sort of thing. But we're just on our last round of rent raises, and when they get all the leases signed with a very reasonable expense ratio and a 6% cap rate, that building will be worth $5.4 million, right? In less than 2 years. So that's the power of, again, this group, but also investing with what you can at the time you can, and letting that grow and multiply, turning basically a 368 purchase price into a $5+ million building in effectively 8 years, right? So it's really spectacular growth in there. Does anybody have any questions on those stories so far? Cole on the chat or anybody in the room? Okay.
On chat.
Who's got a burning question for the panel? Yes, sir.
What do property managers typically charge?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say it varies a little bit on the area, and it also varies a little bit on the number of units you have, right? So the economy of scale, the more units you have, the lower percentage they'll charge. It should never be more than 10% unless it's a short-term rental. Thank you, I was getting cold too. It should never be more than 10% unless it's short-term rental, and then it ranges between like 20 and 30% because it's a lot more labor intensive. And then if you have scale and you've got some other units, you can get it down to 8, maybe 7. Yeah, on a bigger unit, probably 5%, right? If you're on a 25, 30 units plus, maybe 5%. Now, I will say, it's also a little bit of a moment of you get what you pay for, right? I've had very inexpensive property managers, and I've got very light services, right? And so you want to make sure that they're happy with that number, not just you're happy with that number, right? If they're happy with that number, then all that's great, right? But if they're not happy with that number, then you're going to get second fiddle. Oh, and then that's just the ongoing. Usually they'll range between a full month's rent for placing a new tenant to maybe a half a month's rent for placing a new tenant. Sometimes it's like, I want to say in Oklahoma, they charge like $250, right? $250 to place a new tenant. And they'll usually have some sort of fee for release of the same tenant as well. Small, but there. Cool. Is that anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. I think fees is a secondary thing. It's really service of the property manager, how well they communicate, is much more important when you're trying to vet a property manager. I mean, a percentage or two doesn't make a huge difference in your ROI. It's turnover. I mean, that's your biggest cost. When there's turnover, how quickly are they going to place the tenant, and how much is it going to cost? And you can see the variations of cost. So that's really, for those of you that have units, that's what gets you.
Yeah. And there is something of a sliding scale for the more units you're bringing to the table. So if their normal rate is 8%, you can probably get 7 if you're bringing 10+ units. Yeah, and still without expecting to see a degrade in service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Property management will make or break an investment though. Like you have to have good management. Some of the properties I've owned before, I had to sell because I couldn't find good managers in the area. And I had, the numbers worked on paper, but without actually being able to actualize it, it's just not worth the risk and the time.
That's a great point too. I'll get you in 1 second. I have helped a lot of people buy rental properties, and I always tell them that they should start out with a manager. And sometimes people think, well, I want to learn it, so I'll do it first. I'm like, no, learn it while you pay a manager how to do it, because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, especially in Washington, right? The landlord tenant laws are very favorable towards the tenant. So you can get yourself in a world of hurt if you do it wrong, and learn from them while they're, like pay them to show you the way rather than fumble and make all the mistakes, right? What I've also seen property management, like this is a straying from your original question, but I think very well worthwhile topic is 100% agree with Jesse that it makes or breaks the project. And if you're looking at a property and it doesn't make sense, if you have to pay a PM, then don't buy it, right? Move on to another one that does make sense. to pay the PM, because we help a lot of people buy rental properties, and the ones that don't stick with being an investor are the ones that try to manage them themselves, right? I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm saying if you have, like, I have a busy job, right? Three out of the four of us have a day job, right? No, you still have a day job.
I do.
It's just your dream day job that you really like. So, which mine's my dream job too, don't get me wrong. But we all have jobs, right? And if we were trying to manage all these properties all the time all ourselves, then what happens is you start to resent them, and you start to think, man, this is taking away time from my job, or taking away time from my little bit of rest recharge time I get with my family. So maybe it's not worth it, right? And then, vice versa, like, not everybody's spouses are in this room, right? I see a couple of pairs, but you might have to convince your significant other that this is a good idea. And if it's constantly a battle, and you're having to go over there to that property and maintain it, or you're always on the phone with somebody, complaining about the leaky toilet or whatever, then they're going to start to think it's not such a good idea too, right? So I think management is so many folds a really important piece, because it will keep you a happy property owner, right? I'm not a landlord. I pay people to be landlords. I'm the property owner. Make sense?
I'll say one other thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. I think I made more money with a property manager managing than I made when I tried managing myself, because I didn't know market rents. Anytime a repair needed to happen, I would spend hours and hours. I'm not a handy guy, so I'd either have to spend hours trying to figure it out myself, pay retail prices at Home Depot, go back to Home Depot 50 times, trying to fix this thing. When property management gets in there, they have staff, who handle it. They're paid hourly just to get, the water heater taken care of. They know what they're doing. They saved me money and made me more money than me trying to manage myself.
Yeah, and one more point on that front, and I'll come back to your question, is the best deals that we find, that you're going to find in the inner circle. Where do you think those are coming from, right? They're under market rented properties. You know who manages those? The owner, right? So I agree. Property managers have made me a ton more money, because you might forget to raise the rent. You might not know the market rent. You might be a softie and not want to raise the rent on whoever lives there right now, right? So having that layer of insulation as the property manager, they make sure that they keep you at market rents, and people keep the property in good shape. So many good reasons to have them. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was gonna ask, how do you guys find the best property manager, especially at state? What is your strategy to find the best one?
Referrals.
Referrals, all referrals.
Yeah, and that's the power of this group, is because we're all investing in the same areas. So we have, you'll look on, if you're in the inner circle, you can see in the forums, we're talking about that. And we're saying, here's the property manager I'm using. Here's the good things about them, the bad things about them. And that networking is really where it comes down to, is just to see who the good managers are and who the bad ones are.
Awesome. Got some questions on the chat?
Yeah, and I can add to that though. I still use Google reviews. I know some people say, hey, it's, they're gonna trash the property manager all the time on it. But I will say this, being a responsive property manager still matters. So I do pay attention to that, because if they're not happy, they're gonna leave and you're gonna have turnover. So there's a balance, right, on it. So I do pay attention to that. I've never been burned by picking a property manager with decent Google reviews, but
hard to find one with a 5-star review.
Yeah, that won't happen. That won't happen. But if you see a 1-star, I wouldn't use them even if they were referred to me.
Great.
I have a follow-up question about the whole under market. Well, I'm also actively looking right now for commercial properties, and what I notice is, you're right, like a lot of properties are overpriced, right? The price is overpriced when they sell it, but then there's under market rent. So how do you win in this situation? When you calculate your numbers, it doesn't make sense, right? Because like it's overinflated and the market's under, they're under market rents. But then you see the potential when you come in and take over, because you do the comps and like, okay, this property could go for like 1,000 unit, and like you see your cash and cash go up when you do your pro forma, but then as is, like, so does the number have to make sense as is, or can you buy it under market, but then look at the pro forma? I'm just confused. Where do you go about that?
That's a super question. So, and Cole, can everybody on Zoom hear us okay? Can you just double check?
Yeah.
Okay. So, so many different things unpacked there, right? And that's a really great question. What I would say is, a property does not have to make sense in its current state to make sense for you to buy, right? And that's probably when you're going to get your best buys, right? The property that we are repositioning in Clarksville was under market rented by $300 per unit times 42 units.
So
Right.
under mark, $300 under market.
$300 under the market rents, and that's just like a lot of them were in decent shape, right? Now, some of them had the, hoarder in them or whatever, and we had to go through and totally, start over. But most of them were just paying like $700 when market rent was $1,000. And it's because they just weren't managed well, right? And so if you can look at your, I always look at it as is right now, here's what it is. Because fact is that's how it's gonna look for a couple of months while I buy it, right? Because there might be leases in place, or maybe it's gonna take a while to reposition. So I look at, here's what it looks like today, but here's what it looks like pro forma.
Right.
And I try to be, I try to use real numbers on pro forma, and what I would say is trust but verify, right? So that the calculators you're gonna get inside of the inner circle are gonna have some numbers on there. I always double check those, right? I want to make sure that I'm doing a little bit of my own due diligence on those numbers as well. Because here's the thing, every property you're gonna see that's listed, guess what it's gonna say about the rents? Under market rent, right?
Yeah.
They all think they're under market rent. And I just sold a property in Linwood, and I feel like those rents are under market, but I'll tell you what, every time I try to raise the rents, it's crickets. So maybe it's not really under, it's under what it looks like it should be on paper, but that particular place, for whatever reason, won't rent for more, right? It just won't. So I would say, yes, you need to look at pro forma, but I also look at what it is today, because partly your qualification is going to be based on what it is today.
Right.
So if you make a pile of money and you don't really need the rental income to make it work, and it's 1 through 4 units, great. If it's 5 and above units, then that commercial lender is really going to dig into that property, and they might say, hey, I see your pro forma numbers, but to right today, it just doesn't make a lot of sense, and they might want some more down payment.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's gotta somewhat make sense as is.
You've got to understand the economics of it as is,
Okay.
and then have that pro forma ready, and then it really depends on the commercial lender, whether they'll look, they'll give some weight to that pro forma, or if they really want it to make sense today.
What's your cutoff, like for cash and cash return? What are you looking at? 6%, 7, 8?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it kind of depends on, that's a good one. We'll go down the line with that. So for me, I'm looking for a 10% cash on cash return or better, right? And that's just straight cash on cash, not including any of the other ancillary benefits.
Right.
And now that said, if it's in a market where I already have properties, or I feel like I can, pro forma it up, or there's some value add, I might dip below that a little bit on a property by property basis. But 10 is my current standard when I'm looking.
Okay.
Let's go down the line.
Thank
Okay,
you.
sure. I mean, I look for 12, maybe 14 if I can find it, but I like 1 to 4 units. And you can find that. I personally, if I can't find that number, I like syndications. So like Sean was mentioning, I think syndications are another play as well. So I'm balancing investing properties versus a syndication.
Can you just explain a little bit
yeah.
about syndication too,
Sure.
like in simple terms?
Yeah.
Yeah, so syndication is basically a pool of investors getting together to buy a larger asset. So generally you have general partners that are taking the lead, and they're bringing in limited partners, so LPs that are investing into this larger building. So usually they take a cut just for putting it together, and you're getting a return. So it's very typical to get, say, 7-8% cash on cash, and then a 15 to 18% IRR. That's pretty amazing for not having to do a whole lot. So I'm always thinking about that when I'm looking at properties.
Yeah, so if you're gonna do the work, you want 12 to 14%.
Yes.
But if it's gonna be relatively passive, and 7 or 8% of syndication is good.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you guys.
Yeah, I think that my perspective has become a little bit different, and it's made it harder for me to invest out of state. But I mean, I'm looking for burrs now for the most part. But when I was investing out of state, about like a 9% number is a little hard to figure out what it is based on, whether or not you're kind of throwing a dart at the wall for what the CapEx is going to be, what your maintenance is going to be on it. Like, you can have a sense of it, but you really don't know until you're in the trenches, like how close that was. And so I think a lot of times that, the encouragement is to overestimate those and see if you've still got a cash on cash number that makes sense. And then you might be pleasantly surprised that it turns out that your 8 or 9, 7, 8, 9% cash on cash return is a 12.
Right.
But I think that for me, I'm now looking at it from the standpoint of, is there enough distance between what I'm paying for it versus what it's going to be worth after it's fixed up, to where I can refinance all my money back out and, have infinite returns.
Awesome. And I'm somewhere between them two.
Okay.
I like value add. I'm always looking
Right.
for, and
Like
when
coin laundry.
right. And when you find value add, your cash on cash is gonna go way up, if you can get those rents to increase, or you can get, your cash out kind of thing.
Yeah.
But initially, I'm usually at that 12 to 14% is kind of the minimum that I'll even start looking into something. And then hoping that I can then get cash out as well, or get close to that, so.
Great. Cole, do you have some on?
Yeah, we have one relevant to the current question, and then we have a couple we'll backtrack on, but this one from Lily was asking about syndication. And she said, can you still 1031 exchange out of syndication?
No. There's so many different ways to go. You can't 1031 out or into a syndication, but you can turn 1031 into a DST, which is a Delaware statutory trust. It's kind of like a syndication. And I don't know that I would be able to explain the difference. But I do have one of our financial planners that's in the group, Austin Dean. He's looking into some options there for us, and I'm going to make sure he shares that in the forums as well. So look for that as a forum topic, is DSTs as an opportunity. The reason being is I personally have some exchanges coming soon, and I the syndications are pretty sweet, like Sean was saying. So the DSTs are pretty sweet as well. And so if I can move some of that money from a relatively active investment into a 100% passive investment and make similar returns, then I would be interested in that. Yeah.
A lot of the accreditations I see, or a lot of the syndications I see, you need to be accredited and an accredited investor. Is that a general rule, or are there syndications where you don't have to be accredited?
It's not a requirement, but it is. You're going to see that a lot, right? And so accredited investor, there's some caveats you got to meet. $250,000 liquid. There's an income as well. What's the, Sean, do you know the income limit?
I think you have to make $200,000 for 2 years in a row.
Yeah. Okay.
Or have $1 million of assets.
Yeah. And be able to invest a certain number. There's different funds that will allow a smaller investment from non-accredited. And then if you want to invest a bunch of money, you might have to be accredited, which chances are if you want to drop $250,000 in investment, you probably would be accredited anyways, but there are some rules around that. But yeah, good question.
I can add just a couple things.
Yeah.
So syndications, it comes down to the classification. So the SEC, I think Reg D, and then there's 506D, I believe, is the one you can have sophisticated investors and accredited. And sophisticated means that you just have to call up the sponsor, talk to them on the phone, hang up, call them the next day. And now you have a relationship with them. And then as far as amounts go, if you're using a marketplace like CrowdStreet as a marketplace, their minimum is 25,000. So you don't have to put in 250,000. You can get started with quite a bit less.
Yeah, and if I could add, I think that's B is allows it non-accredited, and then C is accredited.
Yeah.
The issue though is when you're giving money to somebody in a syndication, you have to trust them. And trust me, it's not easy the first time to send over 25 or 50,000. And when I do it, it's people that have been around and have done it. And most of them I see are doing the just accredited only. Because I think it's easier for them to handle it, but they can't advertise it the same way. So just, if you look into that, just make sure these people have a reputation to protect.
Can you talk perhaps about the different options for the legal structures? Because I know you got LLCs, the syndicates, but like you said, there are also limited partnerships. So does that make a difference to you? And what are some of the pros and cons as somebody who will be joining one?
Yeah. So I don't like, I'm not a syndicator. I have invested in several syndications. So as far as the legal structure of that, not so much. What would be beneficial, I think, to talk about would be the legal structure of owning like a 1 through 4 unit property or even a commercial building. In commercial, it's almost a requirement to own property as an LLC, right? So you'll want to have an LLC started up when you're gonna buy a 5 or more unit building. 1 through 4, it's a choice, but Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the best price mortgages you're gonna find, and they will not lend directly to an LLC. However, they've both come out and said clearly that they're okay if you move the property to an LLC after the financing is complete. So if you'd like to have it in an entity, you absolutely can do so. You just have to do it post-closing. Portfolio lenders, like we've got a new program that's a debt service coverage ratio program. So it just underwrites the property, more like a commercial loan. And that does allow to lend directly to an LLC. So I think LLCs are a very important part about what we do. I don't know that everyone should have every single property in an LLC because what I've seen so many times is I look at everybody's financials, right? And so I see they've already broken their LLC before they really even got started, right? So in order to keep your LLC legal, you need to have a separation of accounts, right? You have to file it has to have its own spot on your tax return or file its own tax return. You can't commingle the monies, right? And that's the biggest one that people mostly do is, well, I pay the electric bill out of my personal account because it's on auto pay. Well, then you've just ruined your LLC and all the money you spent doing it. You have to maintain reports. You have to file every year and ongoing, keep that ongoing. So there are some hassles to it. When I first got started, I had most of my single family or small multifamily in my personal name, and I carried a big umbrella policy, right? And so that big umbrella policy was meant to cover my rear if something bad happened. The more you have, the more you have to protect, though. And so you start to siphon off and put more and more things into LLCs. Jesse, what's your take on LLCs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complicated question with lots of different answers. Cody's right. You do have to maintain them. So if you're gonna set it up, you should maintain it. I personally wouldn't go crazy to start with. I would keep it very simple. And as you get more complicated, address it. So yeah, I don't have an answer. It's so personal. So
Yeah, I think that the only downside of LLCs is that as you start to, if you're trying to silo every single separate investment, it can become exhausting to deal with that many LLCs on your tax returns and in every other form. I've adopted a personal strategy of, getting a few under one LLC. And then at a certain point, I feel like I asked myself this question. If I got sued, how many other properties are now exposed within that LLC? And is it more than I want? And if the answer is it's more than I want to have exposed to be potentially liable in a lawsuit as something they could take away, then it's time to start another LLC so that you have some separation. But I think that is just kind of like a personal ethos as to why I do it. I think people who say, you know what, you should have an LLC that's different for every single property and they can manage that, more power to them.
They're not wrong, right? I think it's a very great way to do it. It's just, you're probably gonna, after about 30, you might have to employ a CPA full-time, right? Like, or an accountant, somebody to do that. So yeah, it can be very difficult. What I've recently started doing was state by state, right? So I have some new investments in Wisconsin. So I have a Wisconsin LLC, and then now I have a new LLC that we've opened up in Minnesota. I forgot to add that to my states. So I just bought a triplex in Minnesota. So now I have a new LLC. Don't you know LLC in Minnesota, right? That's my new LLC in Minnesota, and I'll start adding properties to that until like Donovan said, where I feel like maybe there's too much risk here, and I'll have a don't you know too, right, or whatever, right, and you separate them out and move things around. Jesse, how about you?
Yeah, I think as you add on LLCs, you need help, because it does get complicated, just with paperwork, with bookkeeping, with all that kind of stuff. And so I think the more LLCs you have, the more complicated it gets. I think it protects you more. And I think that I think it's a good in a lot of ways. The other thing I would say is that for me, having LLCs has made lending a lot more complicated. And specifically if you're trying to go conventional lending, it just gets so complicated because you have to trace every bank transfer back and forth. So that's all his fault.
Yeah, that's very true.
What else? One question. What about series LLCs as an alternative?
I'm not an attorney, so yeah, unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to answer that one. But good topic for the forums. I would say we've got an attorney that's part of the group, Jensen Mosseth. I think we could ping him on there and ask him.
Yeah. All right, and then Freddie, going back a little bit, asking about your 42 unit, did you use hard money or private money?
Oh, that's a good question. I got a commercial loan on it with a local bank. So F&M Bank in Tennessee did the financing on that. And it wasn't like a hard money type of deal where we did a bunch of renovations built into the loan. It was already, 85% occupied, something like that. So we took it over. There was plenty of tenants in there. And then as we updated and upgraded, we just basically did it out of either cash or cash flow from the building. Basically, that thing's been break even for like 19 months. And now I think December, we're gonna get a check that's gonna be more than the mortgage payment. So, but we've also spent $144,000 on renovations that I didn't write checks for. So, it's been good. And obviously I could turn around and sell it tomorrow and be very happy with the investment. But the idea is that it's supposed to be throwing off, $10,000 a month cash flow more. So, and I think it absolutely will. So,
yeah. And then Reinhard asked about your OKC units. How are they doing?
Oh yeah, good. Am I the only one? Me and Dustin. Mine are a little different. Dustin's got single families, they're Section 8s. I think I would say those are pretty much autopilot, right? Yeah.
Good property manager.
Another couple of folks in the group have great same sort of mantra, single family. They convert the garage and make it a 4th bedroom, and they get them on Section 8 government assistance housing, and it's just set it and forget it. Mine are a little different. They're a little lower quality. Bigger units, an 18-unit complex, and then a 37-unit complex. And I'll tell you, any kind of trouble you could have, we've had it, right? It's definitely been all of the above. They are currently listed. There's a memorandum going around, and we're looking for to sell those and move on into a little bit nicer markets.
Lily asked, how do you pick a market? And do you always pick cash flow over appreciation?
Solid question. Let's start on the other end, Tom.
In my point in investing right now, I'm looking for cash flow. That's my primary goal when I'm looking for it. And so this probably isn't a popular answer, but like I look at the deal before I look at the market. And so if the deal makes sense, then I'll kind of look at the market from there. I don't necessarily, now that I have a couple of markets, I'll keep looking in those markets, but I haven't chosen a market and then looked for deals. I chose the deal first. And that probably isn't the wisest thing to do, but there we go.
I always say cast a wide net, and that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, there's actually a profile you can take, I think, on the AROI site, and it seemed pretty handy. I think it spotted me right as like somebody who wants to split the middle. I think that appreciation can equal a lot of your largest gains over time. And appreciation is also what's probably going to get you to where you can then refinance it to then finance other things. So I don't like discounting appreciation as a important tool of investing.
Yeah, awesome.
All right, I'll give the cop out. I like both appreciation and cash flow. Because you're both right. You make most of your money honestly off of appreciation. We've all lived in Seattle. You go on any property, it's been a straight line for a while. But for me, I pick it based on property manager. That's number one. I have a good property manager in Illinois that I've worked with since like 2018, and a very good one in Tennessee. And that's kind of where I'm sticking, just because I trust them to run the asset when I'm not around.
I love it. That's good. Personally, I like both as well, but in different places, right? So like I buy here, and I like people say like, oh, I can't make money in Washington. It's absolutely true on a cash flow basis, but you can crush it on appreciation here, right? And so I still am picking up deals when I can find them around here that maybe don't cash flow as well, but I know will appreciate well. And then what I do is, in 2 or 5 or 7 years, I sell that property and move that money to the Midwest, right? So I know this market, I know it well, and it's treated me well for the last 10, 15 years, right? I guess not 15. Well, from 11, so 10. It's been 10 really solid years of appreciation in this market. So you can kind of bank on that, but it's not the only thing I want to bank on, right? I have clients where that's all they do. They buy, $8-9 million, $800,000, $900,000, $1 million rentals in Redmond, and all they want to do is put 40% down and break even. That's their investment strategy, right? And I'm like, man, okay. I mean, it's worked for the last 10 years. That guy's crushed it, but it's not predictable, I don't think, right? And yes, our market's been on fire, but I've also been in the business for 21 years. And I remember when appreciation was a myth, right? You know, like there was 5 years in a row where properties didn't go anywhere or they went down and down. But what happened in the Midwest was rents stayed level, right? You could count on your $1,000 a month in cash flow, right? So I personally like both, but in a different way. I like to buy for appreciation locally in markets that I know are going to appreciate, or I think they're going to appreciate. And then I take that money and move it into places where I can depend on the cash flow. And if I get some appreciation in Clarksville or Milwaukee, gravy on top, right? That's great. But I know what I'm making on a cash flow perspective.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Now, Steve is asking, what are some guidelines to help first timers evaluate a property as a long-term rental investment? Are there spreadsheets, websites, or ways to help you crunch the numbers?
Yeah, well, you're in the right spot, my friend, because Addicted ROI has all those things. There's some great calculators in the forums. Dina, make sure and Dinah, make sure we make a note and send. Maybe we can get some of those in the chat if we're doing that, or direct them to the right spot. Rules of thumb, though, I think that's a good one, right? I mean, we all probably have our rule of thumb. The most famous one, I think, is the 1% rule. If you're not familiar with the 1% rule, if you're going to spend $300,000 on a property, we'd want it to rent. You would want it to rent for $3,000 a month, right? 1% of the value in monthly rent. I would almost guarantee you, anywhere you go in the country, if you can meet the 1% rule, you're going to make money on a cash flow basis, right? Now, there's areas like in Texas where taxes are 3%, and in Illinois, taxes are quite high, and there's areas where Oklahoma where insurance is really high. But if you can meet 1%, you're probably going to do quite well. Jesse, what's your favorite rule of thumb? That's not the 1% rule. I stole the easy one.
Yeah, I mean, I would just find a calculator and I run it. And I know what my numbers are. And, I would run deals every day just to see what's there. I think that's the only way to learn it. And then assume things are going to go wrong. How would you feel if it dropped X% and be comfortable with it? And I think the other rule is just if you haven't done one, just do one. And I mean, you're not going to lose everything. It's real estate. It's not going anywhere. As long as you've analyzed it, that's the way I would start.
So you use a spreadsheet basically. So you look at the calculator every time. Yeah. So and I mean, I think everybody's going to use that. The cool thing about the calculators that are in the site is they're usually pre-filled with some kind of general things, right? Like 5% for CapEx and 5% for maintenance and 8% for management and a rate and some fees and some closing costs. So you can really plug in like 3 or 4 numbers.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, dig in.
The issue is the older properties, right? You can't run the CapEx the same. You're gonna have just a lot of leaks and things like that. So if you're starting new, I recommend newer properties. You're gonna have a lot less CapEx. In those, I recommend don't go below, say, $800 per unit. You're gonna get a different class of tenant if you go too low. So there's things that
in rent, you mean?
Yeah, in rent. So there's things to think about, when you're analyzing it beyond just the numbers. Age of property, quality of tenant. Google walk the neighborhood and see if there's cars on the lawn. You may not want to be in that neighborhood.
That's one of my favorites.
So,
yeah. Google Street Views is your friend when you're out investing out of state, right? Yeah. Totally.
I've gone back and forth between using the ARI calculator and using the Bigger Pockets one. If I really want to do a deeper dive, I find that extra bit of granularity can be really helpful to just kind of open your eyes to make sure you're asking some of the extra questions. And then I think that when you're analyzing a property, once you've kind of gotten some of these basics down and out of the way, like, taxes, CapEx, maintenance, then there's some other questions you might want to ask that are a little bit trickier, like, hey, are these units all individually metered for electric and water? Because that could actually be a huge chunk of your cash flow that's going away.
Because if they're not,
if they are not, then you are probably having to pay that for them. And yes, you might be charging a fee back, maybe not. Like that's another area where you can strategically change something up to increase, the return on a place. But asking those kinds of questions and really being able to calculate out some of those extra bits. What's another one that I thought of just a minute ago, along with like, flood insurance, like an insurance that people don't usually think about. And sometimes you get right on down to the closing. It's like, oh, by the way, you're in a flood zone and that's going to be required, or we're not lending to you. And you get hit and you're like, wow, that's $3,000 a year that I did not expect was going to not be in my pocket. So just like making sure that you hit all of those, like just kind of creating a checklist and making sure you've asked all those questions so you don't get blindsided with something.
Awesome.
And I would just add, the more that you do, the more you get used to what you're looking at. You know, you're gonna see a price point and a rent, and it'll click right away without even having to run numbers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, the 1% rule, or having some rules of thumb, just be like, nope, 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 so that you can see a lot of deals, right? And that's, Jen and Dina and everybody, they'll always tell you like, and now Jesse too, like run a lot of deals, right? Evaluate the deals and get really comfortable with the calculator and the spreadsheets, whichever one you want to use, or build your own, right? But like really get comfortable looking at it so that you can make a pretty quick decision, because you'll find out that, good properties sell real fast, right? Yes, ma'am.
How do you guys find deals?
Oh, that's a great question. So if you're new to the Addicted to ROI group here, there is a deal list that basically, every day we're seeing deals come through, right? So these are pre-scrubbed deals that are brought to us by the Agents Invest network of agents all across the country. 30, so maybe Dina or Diana can, 37, 38 markets in a bunch of different states, all these different cities, where they've got a investor focused real estate agent that's out scrubbing deals, whether it's on their MLS, right? Because there's areas like Milwaukee's a great example. Like there's killer deals just on the MLS that have been on the market for 2-3 weeks. Just because I don't know if I know why, but there's not a lot of people there that are investing in real estate to the same level that we see it. And a deal to them is not a deal to us is not a deal to them, or vice versa, right? We might think, oh my gosh, 12% cash on cash is awesome. And they're looking for 20, right? And so they're not going to pick up that same property, right? Or maybe they're not as sophisticated and they don't want to deal with the Burr style investing where they're fixing it up, right? So I find, and I think a lot of us have found a lot of deals on the Addicted to ROI deal site. Heather, like that's pretty much all your ad lately, yeah? Awesome. So they're pre-scrubbed deals, their calculator's already built. Basically, I take down that calculator and change this, change that. Well, this is a 50-year-old building, so I want my CapEx to be 10% instead of 5%. Or the agent put in an 8% market appreciation. Yeah, cool in the last year, but not over the last 30 years, right? So I don't want to bank on that to make that deal make sense for me. So I look at that calculator and then I make some adjustments. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then again, cast a wide net, right? I tell people everywhere I go what I do and what I'm looking for, right? So like I'm looking for burrs that I can flip or hold in this neck of the woods so I can create appreciation. And I'm looking for out-of-state multifamily that makes good cash flow. And the more people you tell, the more chances you'll get at something coming back to you.
Right. And then these deals that you get from the inner circle, are they like multifamily, single family, or is it like a combination?
All of the above. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
so like single family homes in Oklahoma City for 75 grand to 40 unit apartment buildings for 2.5 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Everywhere in between.
I will just counterpoint that Cody may not be in the same situation as some of you who are on the newer side. And, just because you tell an agent, I'm looking for this, doesn't mean they're going to call you up. They probably won't. They call Cody because they know that if they bring that to him, there's a very good chance he's going to close for them. You need to be aggressive in the early stage. You need to, figure out what you want, be laser focused on it. And when you see it, you really need to make sure that agent gets the impression that you are wanting all the information right away and you are ready to make an offer if it checks out. Because I think otherwise, one of the things that will happen, especially if you don't have a lot of deals under your belt, is that you're going to say something, you're going to kind of expect them to call you back and like keep courting you. And that's not how it works for out-of-state investing. Like they will give you the information and then it is up to you to keep the story, the conversation going, or they're going to assume that you looked at it and didn't like it.
Yeah, that's a super good point. And you're absolutely right. And to like stack on top of that is if somebody does bring you a great deal, transact, right? Like buy it. And Jesse was saying, you're not going to even if it's not a great deal in the end, buy it, take a lesson, especially if it's a $80,000 house in, Oklahoma, like you're not going to get crushed, right? It may not work out perfect, but it's tuition, right? Think of it as learning tuition. And shoot, there was one thing I wanted, if you do transact, then that's when they will call you again and bring you the super sweet deals, right?
Because they know you're serious.
Because they know you're a buyer,
Right.
right? You've transacted, you've put money in their pocket, you've helped get their seller out of whatever position they were in, right? But like you solved the problem. And so I don't want to say like just go willy-nilly and buy anything that's out there, because you got to do your research, but don't be the perennial tire kicker, right? Like if you're always evaluating deals and never actually pulling the trigger and buying one, then that's when those agents are like, yeah, sure, I'm not calling Cody again, because every time I send him a deal, it's not a deal to him, and then I sell it to somebody else at full price. And then one more, I never try to really negotiate an agent really hard on their commission, right? Because I want them to bring a deal back, right? And similarly, anybody involved, right? Like I want them to be on my team, I want them to be on my side, and if a deal doesn't work for me, I will tell them like, hey, this doesn't work, and here's why. And if they choose, they want to come back to me and sweeten the deal, whether it's a smaller wholesale fee or the seller reduces the price or whatever, cool. But like, I just tell them like, this isn't a deal for me at this price, and this is why. And then sometimes they'll come back, sometimes they won't, but they'll respect you for saying like, this isn't the deal for me, right? Rather than not calling them back or kicking the tire, right?
Good to know.
Yeah, and if I could just riff on that, I mean, I agree with going deep. I have an agent in Chicago, for example, I've invested I bought a house from him or a fourplex from him and invested in a syndication. And we probably just shoot the breeze every 60 days just because we have a good relationship. And I've introduced other potential investors to him as well. So try to bring him value. And same thing with Tennessee, I check in and see what's going on. And there's only just a couple of people I do it with because I just don't have the time to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Just anything down on that?
No.
Fair enough. Okay. Cool. Any more questions on the
Yeah,
Zoom?
we've got a lot.
Oh, okay. I got some too. So
So Igor is asking, if you would be starting over today with what you know now, would you still be buying 1 to 4 units, or would you be going for the 5+ units if you can?
Why don't you start?
I like commercial, so I would have, and I started with a house that we lived in and transferred into a rental, jumped up to a 4-plex in Spokane, did a house hack duplex, and then I went out of state to a commercial property, owned 47 units in Cincinnati. So I jumped into the commercial realm pretty quickly because I like commercial. It just makes sense to me to buy wholesale and buy in bulk. It's the same amount of work to buy in bulk than it is to buy that single family house. So I don't think there's, if you want to do commercial, I don't see any reason to start with, residential.
My advice is if you are going to own a primary residence, own a house hack as your thing. Because if that's kind of your first goal is I want to own my own home, start with the house hack. I mean, they're just so good. They feel like a no-brainer if you can, find the right kind of space for it. You have to be flexible about how you go about it, but like that would be step 1 for me. And then I think that if you're not able yet to purchase in your own area you're in, then I would be looking where is an area where I don't have to put all my capital into one deal, but I can like test the waters somewhere that has been vetted by some of my fellow investors.
quick definition on house hack for those that don't know.
Sure. So a house hack is when you buy a place that you are living in and then you are also renting out space within that property. So maybe you bought a duplex, maybe you bought a split level and you live on the top and you rent out the bottom, but essentially creating a situation where you are able to have somebody else pay a portion of your mortgage, which is allowing you on one side sometimes to purchase a bigger property. So someone else is helping to pay for your larger piece of leverage that you were able to get. And sometimes it's just they're paying a good chunk of your mortgage so that you can have more free cash flow to start saving for your next investment.
Awesome.
What was the question again? Can you repeat it?
Yeah. If you'd be starting over today with what you know now, would you still be buying 1 to 4 unit, or would you be going 5+ units?
Yeah. So I'm going to take the opposite viewpoint of the other Jesse. So I look at it this way. The market has shifted, at least since I was investing in 2015 when it was easy to find birds. And, I did, a couple of them a year. pretty consistently and was pretty successful. Now interest rates are so low and inflation is really high. If you can get an investment loan at 3.5% on a 1 to 4 unit tied up for 30 years and inflation is 6%, your asset is actually your debt. And if it cash flows on top of it, I mean, you're crushing it. So I view the asset today as the debt. And if I can get 30-year debt, I'm doing that all day long because I'm making it just on that debt.
I think, real quick, I think Ryan would agree with you immensely because he is a local investor. A lot of their stuff is local, and he's buying, you know, $1 million fourplex, so that he can get $750,000 worth of debt at 3.5, whatever the interest rate is. Because long term, the way you said is perfect. Is the debt on that property is also now an asset, because as time goes by, rates will continue to go back up, right? And the fact that inflation is where it is, having that super cheap interest rate is really valuable. And most commercial loans are not going to be a 30-year fix. Now, there is a Fannie product that allows you to, but in like I haven't been able to find anybody who will do that loan for less than $2 million, like the vanilla flavored Fannie Mae 30-year fix. So generally speaking, our commercial investments on 3, 5, 7-year arms, they've got some prepaid. So the terms are not as good on a commercial loan as they would be on a Fannie Freddie 1 through 4 unit. If I can answer that question, I wouldn't go back and change a thing, because everything that I did then brought me to where I'm at now, right? And so I like both, right? I want to have a mix of both, because there is a considerable interest rate risk in commercial, right? If interest rates go up by 3% and you don't have the capability to refinance, or the market dips and you don't really want to sell, well, now you've got kind of the same rent that you had the year before, but now you have a 3% higher interest rate, right? All of a sudden your cash flow gets sapped. So I like to have diversity. And so to me, that means stocks, it means real estate, it means from commercial, some 1 through 4 unit, right? So I've got a little bit of money in all these different pools so that I've got some more flexibility. Heather, yeah.
An additional point, it is what your time frame is. So for instance, I have a W-2, but March 1st, 2023 is my goal date. Like that's, the
Love
end of
it.
the W-2. So between now and then, and Cody likes the W-2.
I do like the W-2. So we want to get 10 finance properties before the end of that time frame, right?
And yeah, we want to do the conventional 1 through 4, just as many as we can, because I know that with the cash flow, I'll be able to qualify. Plus the properties, the commercial properties qualify, based on their own nature, March 2nd, 2023. So, my strategy right now is like, let's do those conventions.
Well, and when I started in like 2010 investing, I had $100,000 that was on a HELOC. That was my investment capital, right? So I couldn't have bought a 30-unit apartment building, not unless I, built a syndication, and I was not sophisticated enough to do that then. I'm not sure I would do it now, but I certainly couldn't have done it then. So, to that point is when you get started, I think you buy what you can, right? You can buy what you can afford, and you can buy what you're comfortable with. And, for me, that was a $60,000 condo at foreclosure auction. And then I burred it, right? So I fixed it up, got a rent there. Who doesn't know what a burr is? Anybody? Okay, good. We keep saying burr, and I realized maybe not everybody.
Somebody doesn't. I'll say I don't.
Okay, Heather, I appreciate you. So burr is just an acronym, right? It's a Bigger Pockets acronym. Before Bigger Pockets popularized it, we used to call it fix and hold, right? Not as cool as burr. So they did a good job. Bigger Pockets, props to you. So burr is just an acronym for buy, renovate, rent, refi, and repeat, right? So burr, like it's cold outside, B-R-R-R-R. You could I'll add another R to Bigger Pockets, and then retire, right? Like that's what we're doing for Heather, right? She's buying and she's fixing up and she's getting them rented, and then she's gonna exit her W-2, right? So that burr model, it's spectacular, and it's a lot longer play in commercial, right? That's probably a 2-year stretch instead of a 2-3 month stretch. And if you have a limited amount of capital, you kind of have to stick in the 1 through 4 units, buy property, fix it up, get it rented, refinance, get your cash back, and then repeat, right? And that's a lot easier to do in 1 through 4. Cool.
Yeah.
Anything else, Cole?
Yeah, Elizabeth was asking, would you ever invest in a single condo, not a complex, just a single unit?
Well, I'll take that one because I have done that. And it was because it was what I could afford at the time, right? So that was a condo and a complex. I'm not a big fan of condos and complexes. I would buy a complex and condo it. That sounds like a fun deal. But I'm not completely opposed to it, but there's extra things in there that you can't control. Thank you. Dues, right? Dues are a big one. Special assessments are another big one. So it's the kind of thing that if you own a house and the roof needs to be repaired, well, you can kind of see it and you know it's coming and you can budget for it. If the condo association isn't setting up and we look at a lot of associations, if they're not collecting the appropriate amount of money for that, then it's still going to have to happen when the roof starts leaking, and it might be $100,000, it might be $500,000, and they're just going to take that money and divide it up over the units that are in there, and you might have to write a $30,000 or $40,000 check for repairs that you weren't banking on. Right. And dues will typically just crush your cash flow too, right? They really eat into the cash flow. If it's a killer condo in downtown Bellevue and it's going up, 25% per year, well, maybe, right? Like that's an appreciation play, but probably not a cash flow play. My thoughts, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't like condo associations. You lose control over what you can do. But it depends. If there's a killer deal, I would think about it, but my inclination would be no.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cole, anything else on there?
Oh,
Anybody
yeah.
in town?
At the right price, anything is doable.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah, Quinn was asking, are there any syndications you recommend?
Oh, no, I don't recommend anybody. I would say do your own due diligence. Where are you finding yours like on bigger sites like crowds?
Well, like well-known syndicators that are out there. So I will say that they've got podcasts.
But you're doing like people, like you're investing in a person that's doing a syndication.
Yeah. So I invest. So there's the hands-off investor. You guys know that with Bigger Pockets. Brian Burke wrote a book on syndication. I think he's a hands-off investor. So that's a great book to read. He happens to have his own business involving that. So people like that have been around, that's generally who I look at. It just goes to, trusting somebody with a check that you're gonna set up.
Sean, you're a big buyer of syndications. Where are you finding yours?
Networking, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. I honestly can't remember how the first email comes to play, but probably just you keep networking and either through Bigger Pockets. It's funny how everybody seems to be kind of using the same people and connected. Like for my asset protection, I use Anderson Advisors, and they bring on a lot of other people who talk about free stuff and
referrals from trusted providers.
There you go.
Would be good. Yeah, you guys.
I've never invested personally. My brother has done it for about 10 years with a company called Capital 8. And he seems, since he's done it over and over again, to really like
Must be working. Okay, good.
Never done a syndication.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah. Adelina is asking, how do you avoid overextending yourself and how do you limit risk of vacancies, etc.?
Oh, that's a good one. Jesse, why don't you start with it?
Good question. I think, obviously the deal has to make sense. And I think that's where it has to start is you have to have solid numbers to start with. And if the deal doesn't make sense, stay away from it. Don't look at something that's just going to be marginal unless it is like a bird play that that it's going to be a period of, anxiety while you're waiting for it to stabilize. And so I think if you're buying solid investments, then the numbers are going to be there. You're going to have the cash flow. You're going to have the money set aside already for any kind of repairs that need to be taken care of. And so I think that's one of the primary things. I also am relying on my network, trying to find private lenders to help partner with me on different deals, just to help with that side of it as well, just to, kind of expand what I'm able to do and be involved with, but not necessarily using all of my own cash.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I have a lot to contribute to that other than when I was talking about the things that'll kind of like crop up on you with when you're doing your due diligence. Vacancy is one that you get really tempted to tweak to make your numbers work.
Right, bring it down
Um,
from 10 maybe to 9.
yeah.
No, 9 to 8. You're like, yeah, I think it'll
You
work.
need to really trust whatever the property managers in the area and the agents are telling you is the vacancy there. And if that number is higher than the number you want it to be, go with that higher number. Because you can really get yourself in a lot of trouble if you're underestimating vacancy.
Well, that's a good point. What I would say is on vacancy, do the math, right? Like 7% vacancy, you're like, okay, what does that mean? If it's a 10-unit building and you got 7% vacancy, right? Do the math. How there's 10 units and 120 months or 100, there's 12 months, so there's 120 months total, right? So if it's 7% on 120 months total, that means you're gonna not get rent for 8 months ish, right? To think that you would have a new building to you that you're gonna probably plan on trying to raise rents on and only have 3/4 of the units go vacant for 1 month or more for the year, pretty low, right? I would say that's pretty low. So do you guys understand that math? Okay, so like do the actual math of how many months in a year you're gonna have a vacant unit and see, does that make sense to me, right? Because that doesn't make sense to me if I'm repositioning. Now, if it's in a hot area and it's already market rents and you're just paying retail for it, well, maybe that's the right number. Maybe it's even a little high, right? But again, I'd rather shade on the high side and be pleasantly surprised that my rate of return is better than to be like, oh man, I owned this property for a year and it didn't make any money. And I didn't expect that. Jesse, what do you think?
So I think the question was, how do you protect yourself against vacancies?
And keep from being overextended.
And keep from being, yeah, that's a hard question to answer. So definitely have reserves. And I think that just depends. I hate to say it, but you know, if it's a newer property, you're probably a little safer versus an older property that you're burning. I would have a lot more in reserves. Then the other thing I would just add, because Jesse and Donovan said some good things. I mean, the only other thing I can add is I think it's dangerous to have one rental property or two, because if you have a vacancy, that's 100% or 50%. It's actually safer, and it's probably contrary to what a lot of people think. It's safer to have a lot more properties because 1 or 2 vacancies won't be a big deal then.
That's right. That's a good point. That's why we like fourplexes, right? It's the holy grail of 30-year fixed, vanilla flavored qualification, and 4 tenants that are paying 1 payment, right? So yeah, if you have 1 vacancy, well, the other 3 are probably more than paying the payment. If you have 2 vacancies, you're probably doing something wrong, but that those 2 probably will still pay the payment or come close to it. But if you have 1 house and one, like I had a client, they wanted to buy $1 million single family house and not do a short-term rental on it. And you know, there's a $6,000 payment that went along with that. And I said, what happens if you have a prolonged vacancy? Well, like that would really hurt. I'm like, you have to plan for that, right? Because that also is the type of house that maybe doesn't rent to everybody out there, right? Like I personally like workforce housing, 2-bed, 1 bath, maybe 3-bed, 1 bath. Those things stay full, right? Like in our neck of the woods, that's like maybe $1,200-$1,300 a month. In Oklahoma, it's like $600-$800 per month. In Tennessee, it's $800 to $1,000 a month, right? So the lower level, like not war zone type low level, but like the base housing, right? And if you have that type of housing, I think that's a protection against vacancy. I also like to work with my property manager and make sure that they're pre-leasing as early as we can, right? So somebody gives you their notice and they're going to be gone. I'm like, let's get the ad up. I'm like, well, we're going to take pictures. Like you got pictures, right? They got pictures from the last vacant unit, right? Put the pictures out there. Let's get going, get the ad out, start getting people in there. I read that this was in, I think it was Long Distance Investing. The guy was saying that he would like to have, he likes to go into the tenant that's got a lease coming up for renewal and like go in and say, hey, what needs fixing, right? What do we need to fix in here? Let's get it fixed up, get it squared away so that you can have a better likelihood of keeping that tenant. And if they, you know, you can kind of get a feel, not you, but the property manager can get a feel if they're coming or going, right? And then if you do that, you can fix up all the little things that are wrong and then maybe they stay. But if not, and they're clear that they're leaving, you can say like, hey, we're thinking about renovating this kitchen. Could we, you know, knock a couple, maybe $100 off the rent to let us get in here and renovate it while you're living here, right? And so they've had good success with doing the renovations that they're going to do when this person moves out while they're still living there, so they can hit the ground running with a new tenant before they even go, right? So I think that's a good way to reduce vacancy with, time, right? Making sure that you have somebody to move in right behind them, and then maybe get in there and even do the work before they go. Yeah, Sean.
One thing that had, that worked really well, on our 8-unit project in Tennessee, we started with a couple vacancies. And once we got like 1 unit remodeled and ready, we actually offered it to the current tenant pool that we had. We had 4 other tenants that we liked. And we said, would you like to move into this brand new unit? Oh, by the way, the rent is, $200 more,
but it's
it's
new.
brand new. And all of them said yes. Well, now, so guess what that did? That created vacancy when they moved out, so we can work on the next unit. So we were able to recycle tenants that we already had, and that was just a cool trick.
Nice. Good deal.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
If you, it's kind of a risk question, but if you were gonna get 20 doors and you had to choose between a single building or like 5 quad or 4plexes, how much risk is it to do the single building route?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on if you want just one market, right? Because again, diversification, right? If you're gonna buy 1 20-unit building or 5 4plexes. I mean, again, we talked about the financing, why maybe 5 4plexes make sense. But also 5 4plexes means you could buy 1 in Idaho, 1 in Tennessee, 1 in Oklahoma. You spread your risk around city-wise and state-wise, because like I'm heavy into Tennessee. If they shut down that military base that's on the border between Tennessee and Kentucky, we'd be crushed, right? So like if I think you don't want to have too much exposure all in one spot. So personally, I would say you bounce it around a little bit. There's some, and maybe Jesse, the commercial guy, can give me the counterpoint to why one building would be better. But those are a couple reasons that I could think of, maybe to spread it around as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, spreading it around, if you're only buying 20, I think spreading it around is good. I wouldn't have a problem with having 5 4plexes or whatever, but I think both of them come with different risks though, like.
One roof is nice.
It is. And, depending what class of property you're dealing with, there's just a lot less complication with 1 roof versus five roofs. You're dealing with, 1 statement from your property manager rather than 5 different property managers or 5, so it just
Bank
simplifies
accounts,
the process. There's
LLCs.
pros and cons each way, and so.
That's a good question, for sure.
So roughly how much would be the difference having 5 units and a commercial loan and 4 units, roughly?
It would totally depend on what kind of loans you're going for. So the difference between residential and commercial is the 1 through 4 units versus the 5+ units. You can get a commercial loan on a 1 through 4 unit as well. It's and the difference between the loan is that with commercial loans, they're looking at the deal and the project numbers rather than you.
Okay.
And so in Cody's world, all of his stuff is based on your W-2 income and has
Not
to
all
be-
anymore, but yeah.
has to be proven income. They're looking that I am able to repay that loan myself out of my income. And that's kind of the primary thing that they're looking for. They can take into account some of the rents that you're getting from the different, properties that you own.
Sure.
But my name is on that loan. It is me. That's the primary thing that they're looking for. Once you go into the commercial realm, they are another set of eyes looking at that deal with you. And so that, with the residential loans or the whatever, conventional loans, they want you to buy a good investment, but if you don't, again, you're able to repay that loan versus once you get into commercial, they have to know that that deal makes sense. And so you've got another set of eyes looking at the deal to make sure that the numbers make sense, that the rent's going to make sense, that, and that deal now I know can stand on its own because it's gone through my eyes, the lenders,
Yeah.
So it's just a different type of loan that you're dealing with depending on the property.
Good news, bad news, you can make a mistake with 1 through 4 unit lending, right? Like you could buy a property that doesn't cash flow well. And the benefit of that is maybe it doesn't cash flow now, but something, right? Like there's an extra lot, or you can subdivide it, or you can raise the rents or whatever. Like commercial doesn't allow you to do that as much, right? Because if the deal doesn't make sense right now, they're gonna say, give us more down, right? Or just flat no, right? Or some other way that they can find the deal to make it work. But like you can't go to a commercial lender and say, I make $1 million a year. I know this deal doesn't make sense, but I still want to borrow 80%. They'll be like, we don't care, right? Whereas in the residential world, you make $1 million a year, I'll get you a loan for pretty much anything you want, right? Because you can afford it, and the property doesn't have to stand on its own. Donovan, you have anything else?
I was just gonna say that to me, that question really comes back to where you are in your portfolio. I would not, if this was my first deal, I would probably not even remotely consider doing 20 all in one place. I would break it out just because diversification again is so important, whether that's in the same city or just, if something is going terribly wrong with one property and it's your only property, that's a much bigger problem than if something's going terribly wrong with one property and you have 4 properties.
Yeah. So great point. Jesse alluded to that as well.
Yeah, I don't think a whole lot to add.
Okay.
All right, Steve, I was asking, when evaluating a property, do you consider whether the state has an income tax?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to, because tax is a real part of investing, right? And it's a consideration. And what I have found is the states that we are investing in that throw off really great deals sometimes have an income tax, and it's not enough that it makes me not want to do the deal, but it is something you need to consider. You guys run into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I definitely prefer no income tax states just as a general rule.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, and I mean, I would say, I mean, I do consider it, but honestly, I look at the red versus blue state scenario, and that makes a difference. I mean, with that said, I am in Illinois and I like it because it's a very difficult city to navigate. And, having lived there for a while, I have some insight of it, but you don't see a lot of hedge funds coming in because they get burned when they try to come into Chicago. So there are opportunities there, even though it's an income state, just the deal works.
Cool. Yeah. Rosemary was asking, how do you evaluate neighborhoods as you're looking at markets or deals, or is this not a major consideration as long as the numbers work for you?
Yeah, well, I lean on the information that's in the Addicted ROI site, right? So there you can look for crime, right? I think there's easy to spot crime reports. We mentioned it earlier. Google Street Views is your friend, right? Like Google the address, go to the street view, and then go around the block, and then go around the other block, right? See what's there, right? And then I look at the actual overview map and see, is it one block off of a busy street with a bunch of businesses, or is it right in the heart of a neighborhood, right? Is there schools close by, like what's around it? And then, like I was doing this Google Street View, and I rounded the corner and there was a cop car and a guy sitting on the sidewalk with handcuffs. And I was like, I mean, what are the odds, right? Like, yeah, I'll probably skip that one, right? So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily always, I mean, that just might've been a bad day, right? Who knows? But, then there was another one where there was just a mountain of people out front of the house I was looking at, and a couple of cars on the road, and there was people like, I don't want to say they were running, but they were moving quickly to the house. I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna skip that one too, right? So I especially long distance, like, using the technology tools that we have, I think is really important. And, doing that neighborhood evaluation, doing the crime evaluation, looking at the schools, just to see if they're halfway decent. And then, we lean on the local property manager, right? If the property manager doesn't want to drive down that street, probably don't buy it. Right? I mean, they're gonna give you the straight scoop. Jesse?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The numbers in the pro forma, they're super high. I don't tend to believe them, just because the neighborhood won't allow for it, just because of the quality of tenants. So when I'm looking at rentals, I actually look at, I'm finding tenants. So that's really what I'm thinking about at the end of the day. It's not the property, it's the actual tenant. And that's gonna make or break your deal.
Yeah, I think that I can't stress enough how important it is to think about your class of tenant, because that is definitely in my out of state purchase that is not going as well. It was definitely me underestimating what a factor that is when you are dealing with a lower class quality tenant and trying to upscale your unit, and whether or not that's even going to be possible in the neighborhood you're in.
Yeah, you can only improve the building to the level of the neighborhood. Otherwise you start over improving and you won't get a return on it.
And I would just emphasize, trust your property manager. They're the eyes on the ground. They're the ones that are managing it. So if they think they can manage it and they can get this rent for it, then great. If they have any kind of doubt or question, trust them.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Anything else on that call?
Yeah, Jorge,
Yeah.
as he said, as a wholesaler, I don't have a W-2 income, so how do I get approved for a loan if I find a deal and want to invest in it?
Yeah, well, I think that was for me. There's a couple ways, right? So we have a new debt service coverage ratio program that underwrites much more like a commercial loan. Roughly speaking, if you have some investing experience, you can do a 1-to-1 DSCR on that program. So they look at the gross market rents with no deductions, right? So no maintenance, no management, no vacancy deduction, and that can be 100% of your payment, and that is fine. So if you've got a place that rents for $2,000 a month, the mortgage payment can be $2,000 a month. Now, we're probably not going to do that as investors very regularly unless we think current market rents are 2,000, but I can bring them up to 3,500 or 3,000 or whatever the number is, right? Because buying something that rents for 2,000 and the payments for 2,000 doesn't really fit with our goals, right? You're not getting any return on that. So it's meant to allow for the pro forma, right? Being able to increase things as you go by. That program does not look at personal DTI. You have to have a minimum credit score 650. Is that right, guys? 650, I think it is. And if you don't have any landlord experience, then you have to have a 1.15 debt service coverage ratio. So a little better rent versus mortgage payment. But other than that, you have to verify assets and you have to have a 650 credit score, and then the property standalone and makes it qualify. So great product for somebody that has a wholesale only. And now that said, we work with plenty of self-employed folks and people that have unusual incomes, right? Don't have a job. I hear this all the time. Well, I don't have a job, I can't get a loan. Like, do you have income? Well, yeah, I make money here and I do this and I got Social Security, I got this, that, the other. Well, then you have income. You don't have to have a job to get a loan. You just have to have verifiable income sources. So if you don't have verifiable income sources, then the DSCR program is a great solution. And it's not crazy expensive as well. Where some of our competitors will have one that has a 5-year prepay and the rate's 5.25% with a couple points. That's not great. The last one I priced out was with a 2-year prepay. So it still does have a prepay, but a 2-year prepay and a point was 4.25 for 25% down 4 points. So just a little more than what the market would bear in a Fannie Mae scenario. So there's solutions.
There you go. All right, Candy, I was saying for a triplex house hack, do you recommend we still pay rent for our own unit into the LLC to add on top of the total monthly rental income so that the total rental income looks more attractive to a commercial lender?
I don't know that you want to do an LLC for something that you're living in, because you lose the homestead exemptions on your taxes.
Yeah.
And so it's probably better to do that in your own name and just leave that aside from your business. But I'm not a tax professional.
Yeah,
So
always qualifying with I'm not a CPA. And I don't think you would need to pay rent on your own place. Yes, showing more rent would be important, but also not like if you're going to vacate that on the next deal, right? If you're going to vacate that property and there's a new lease signed, then we'd be able to count the new lease right away. I don't think there would be any point to paying your LLC. One, I wouldn't put an LLC in that instance, and two, I wouldn't pay yourself rent into your LLC. Probably also have some extra tax ramifications there that, now it's revenue and you have to pay tax on your own rent dollars. I think that would not be so good.
Cool. Yeah, Erica was saying, Cody and Jen, as a realtor, should we do a referral fee request of the 25% of our own deals when doing out of state investing? Have you asked for a credit to closing costs in the past? To Jen.
Yeah, see, that's a question probably for Jen or Dina. Dina on still?
Dina, you still there? She's there, but I don't know if she's there. Oh, there she is.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so Erica was asking, as a realtor, should we do a referral fee request of the 25% for our own deals when doing out-of-state investing? Also, have you asked for a credit to closing costs in the past?
Absolutely, ask for a referral fee, yes. As an agent, if you're referring to out-of-state agents. And have I done a credit to seller's cost in the past?
Yeah.
Closing costs, like buyer paid closing costs. I think is what she's looking for.
Yes, I have.
So that's a good question that we'll expand on. As a home buyer, like if you're a conventional home buyer, That said, though, there's still like inspection items come up and that sort of thing. When you're buying as non-owner occupied, so investment purposes, there is a limit of 2% of the sales price that the seller can cover towards your closing costs. And so on a $500,000 or fourplex, that's probably enough to cover all of them. But on a $100,000 single family, $2,000's not a whole lot of, it's not going to cover all your closing costs, right? So there is a limit there, and you got to be mindful of that while you're negotiating your contract. Cool.
How do you, oh,
yeah, go ahead.
Another one, cool. How do you guys feel about investing out of country? Is that something you would recommend? If so, what cities or countries?
I've never even thought about it.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, I think the advantages of the loan products in the US are so good. Again, the 30-year fix, you cannot find that in any other countries that I'm aware of. And so I'm gonna stay here all day
Yeah.
long.
Some of the Asian,
Yeah.
some of the Asian countries have longer
Yeah.
term loans, but I don't know if that would be for an investor.
Yeah.
A lot of other countries have significantly different terms for citizens versus non-citizens as well. Like I looked into Mexico, you know, and one, you can't always own property, right? Like if it's within, I think 100 miles of the ocean, you have to own it through a trust, right?
It's a 90-mile
90 miles.
distance. So my dad still owns runs brokerage in Mexico.
Yeah.
And if you are 90 miles from the coast, within that, as a foreigner, you cannot own property.
Yeah.
It all has to be owned within a trust.
Right.
That changed, and it's easier. It used to be very, very difficult. You'd get like a 25-year lease or something, and they're now doing 100-year leases,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But it's kind of a nightmare.
Yeah, but those terms are gonna be probably in the high single digits, low double digits, right? I mean, it's hard money effectively down there. So the folks that I have helped with that, we've generally done a cash out refinance on a property here in the US to get favorable terms, favorable rates, and then they go pay cash out of country. I think it'd be amazing to own property in another country, but the thing that you have there too can be government stability, right? Like there's countries where they just come and take your place, right? And then it is what it is, right? So I would be very cautious of it unless it's a, you know, really stable, well-established country. I think there's a ton of opportunities here to make cash flow, and then you just pay for those awesome vacations you want to have. Yeah.
Canada is not bad.
Canada's not bad, yeah. And that said, like we have a Canadian national program here, like where Canadians can come down and buy property in the US, and they have a very reciprocal type property or loan product up there. Their mortgages are interesting though, that there's never a 30-year fixed. They're all 5-year arms, and then you have to refinance or rewrite the loan at the end of the 5 years, right? So it's just built in that you don't have a fixed rate mortgage.
Amortized over how long?
It depends, but it's 30 usually. It's gonna be 25 depending on what
Got really high valuations right now too.
Yeah.
Very, I mean, here it does not look like a bubble. I mean, we look like the Midwest compared to Vancouver.
Yeah. I have a friend that moved to Vancouver with her husband. And yeah, she was like, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Because everything's a 5-year arm, and you have to refi.
Yeah.
Every 5 years.
Yeah, so to Jesse's point, I think there's no finer terms around than US lending.
Yeah.
One more from Caitlin. Can you refi from a commercial into a conventional or vice versa?
Yes, provided that the property meets conventional guidelines, right? So you couldn't do that if it was a 10-unit apartment building, but if it's a fourplex that you bought using more of a commercial loan because you didn't qualify or some other reason, and then you wanted to refinance that into a conventional loan, yes, you could absolutely do that, as long as you qualify now. But good example, like we've done some properties where they were a fourplex, but it's really duplex and 2 single-family houses on the same parcel, right? That doesn't meet the guidelines of a fourplex for Fannie and Freddie. Doesn't mean you couldn't buy it, but it would be a commercial loan. Now, the silly thing is if you went and connected all those buildings, like I have a property I bought that is 2 houses on one parcel, and the person that I bought it from walled in the middle and put a roof over it, and now it's like an attached carport. Now it's duplex because they're connected. But before they were 2 houses on one parcel, not really financeable. But you put a roof between them and make carports, now it's a duplex. And then I closed it in and made it a garage, and now it looks like a real deal duplex. So there would be a reason why you might buy something with a commercial loan or an like a non-conventional loan and then come back and refinance it. That would be an example I would see. Cool. I had one that I wanted to ask you, so I'm going to jump in with my own question. So I'll start with Jesse on the end. Clever, awesome, interesting ways that you have either or both increased revenue on a property you've bought or decreased expenses to bring up the value.
I would go to the house hack that I did. We lived in a duplex and house hack, we lived in one side and rented out the other. So, I mean, that's not that clever. It was before house hacking was a term though.
Yeah.
So at one point, our mortgage or our rent portion was only like $300 to live there, you know, in Puyallup. So
fun.
I don't think I've really focused very much on cost cutting on anything that I've had so far, but I think that, you know, to kind of answer the question, like one of my secret sauce things is just look for the weird ones, look for the places where no one can figure it out and like work on your Swiss Army knife of different ways that you can find value in that, whether it's division of property or, you know, turning it into a house hack because maybe it's not a conforming triplex, but there's 3 separate spaces like the one that I'm house hacking right now. We live in a 2,600 square foot home that we created a mother-in-law on one side and rent out the living space above the garage on the other. And it is not truly a triplex, but if you're living there, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, you know, you look for the ones and figure out how are you going to create value that somebody else missed. And I have found all of my best deals, all of them on the MLS. And I have done off market too, but like, I think that's worth noting that like you always feel like the best deals are passing you by because somebody else found it off market. That's probably true a lot of times, but guess what? Like there are some great deals out there where people just didn't see it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Jen has a killer story about that too, where she bought I think it was a duplex, but it came with an extra lot. And nobody realized it. It was on the MLS for a long time. She was able to negotiate the deal down, bought it, got that lot. You know, it was already separated, and she fixed up the duplex, sold it, sold that free, and now this lot is free and clear. Use that to build a new duplex on that lot. Basically, use the created found equity as her down payment to build the duplex. Built that duplex, and then ended up selling that for massive profit.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had luck adding additional square footage, so a garage has always worked. I've done that, but I'd say my favorite one is our own house. So, you know, we were lucky enough, we moved here in 2010, and, you know, we built the house then, and the lot is sloped. And at that time, they were just trying to sell houses. Well, I convinced the builder that we would buy it if they left us enough clearance on the 3rd level, the bottom level, to come back and do something with it. So they did. A few years later, we came back, added 1,000 square feet in the basement, decked it out. I refinanced it out, paid a lower amount, and got, you know, all that extra square footage and value.
Cool. This was brought up earlier, and one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure I got to talk about too is, especially in commercial, but it also works for smaller multifamily, is things are based on like a cap rate, right? You guys have heard a cap rate and understand how that works. So basically, value is determined by net operating income and the cap rate, and so that'll tell you what your value of your property is. And so net operating income is basically all your income from the property minus all the expenses aside from a mortgage, right? So taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, management, all those things, right? And so when I buy a property, I like to harden the property with really solid things, right? So LVP floors. So I don't have to go and replace the carpet every time we get a tenant that goes through, right? In the Midwest, this isn't looked upon as well, but I like to do like solid surface countertops, right? So granite or quartz or something like that. It's quite a bit more expensive than Formica, but it'll last for 10 tenants instead of having to do it over and over again, right? We like to put in like low flow toilets and faucets, right? So you shave down on the water bill, especially in a place where it's maybe not separately metered and the utilities are on the landlord, right? And even if you are going to do a bill back, right, where you basically say, hey, I'm paying all these utilities because I got to make sure that the utilities get paid. By the way, water goes with the owner, not the tenant, right? So we usually pay water, sewer, garbage. And so if I bill them back for water, sewer, garbage, and it was $50 per month per unit, and I put in all these low flow systems, and now it drops the price down, now I've got extra revenue, right? So my revenue is higher and my expenses are lower. That squeezes that number. so that you get a better net operating income. And if the cap rates are the same and you have more net operating income, now the value of your property is more, right? So if you can force appreciation that way by increasing revenue, right? Easy to do that with raising rents, but you can also do it with coin op laundry or rent utility bill back or what have you. But not only just thinking about the income side, but also decreasing the expense side as well. Sorry, any question?
Yes, I was looking at property and they came across that too, you know, landlords paying water, like, how do you stay away from that? Because like, okay, you know, some agents would tell me, just increase the rent, you know, just, you're better off increasing the rent than having to pay water. But then in my, like, that doesn't stop them from like abusing water.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't want them to just run the tub every night and like water
Sure.
the lawn, and because
Yeah.
they don't care, I'm paying for the water,
Yeah.
right? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, so the majority of the water bill, aside from like a leak, right? Running an extra bath every, night or whatever is not going to crush your water bill. If there's a leak, it could, for sure. But the majority of the water expense is the monthly billing, right? It's the connection fee. It's the having the connection. If they use, 32 CFFs instead of 28 CFFs, it's not going to make a big difference to the bill, right? If they're running a dog washing scenario or, business out of their apartment, then maybe, it's a different story. But what I have found is if you, especially the bigger buildings, you got to pay that bill, because if they don't pay, it sticks with you.
Right, it's lienable, right? Like,
It is, it's a lienable bill because they'll put it to the owner. Now, there's some things you can do to like, you can get a notice if they haven't paid and blah, blah, blah. But like, I find it's better to take it in-house. And if I run the building right, it can actually be a revenue source too, right? So I'm charging them back at $70 a month or $60 a month, and the actual bill ends up being on average $35 or $40 a month, right? Because I've done the water saving ideas, right? And then in all the common space, you put in the LED lights, right? It just takes up a lot less electric as well.
And so when you mentioned utility bill back, so it's a flat rate that you charge them every month for water.
Correct. Yeah,
Regardless of
and
how much usage
I think that's better than putting it in the rent twofold, right? Because then you can advertise a lower rent, right? And then when they make the application, say, oh, well, of course the rent's $1,300, but the rent, the utility bill back is $75. Like, oh, okay, I didn't realize, but okay, right? Rather than advertising it $1,425 and then you don't get anybody that shows up. Right. So I like to keep them separate. And then also, if things are going crazy in the apartment complex and the water bill is way more than it was, well, then you go like, hey, like, here's the water bill. Like, somebody's using a lot of water. I got to increase this number up. Right. Yeah.
Do you get a lot of complaints? Like for example,
Well,
it's a flat rate. Well, so and so's using more than I do. Why do I have to pay the same?
I'll tell you what, I don't get any complaints because I'm not the property manager.
Sure.
So, yeah, that answers that question. I'm sure they get some complaints because people that pay $600 a month for an apartment are complain a lot, right? I mean, they're going to have some complaints. So I think that if you have a solid insulation between you and you have it like Kelly, like you, I think almost all of us have, Jesse, we got to get you on the Tennessee train, right? Almost all of us have property in Clarksville. And it's just because the property manager there is like probably the best I've ever worked with, right? Their organization is really good. And she just deals with those complaints. So I don't have to, right? And I don't ever even hear about it, right? So do they complain? Probably, but I don't know, right? I don't know for a fact. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course, yeah.
I've got a small creative tip.
Yeah, I love that.
I had a multi-unit building and it had a dumpster. And when I was analyzing what the previous owner was getting charged for that dumpster, I thought it was a little high. Didn't know anything about trash, but I just started calling places. Turns out individual bins have to bill. So I saved about $100 a month. I'm still removing
same amount of waste.
Actually, it's probably more volume. Because, each tenant gets a 96-gallon cart. But changing the carts, and then here's a super random tip, but if you have a parking lot or a driveway and it's concrete or asphalt, it's best not to have the trash truck drive on that lot and turn the tires because he'll create a pothole.
Yeah.
So by taking the dumpster away from the back corner, he no longer drives there. The tenants have to wheel the cart out to the street. All the carts get picked up and the truck doesn't go onto the nice concrete driveway. It's not cracking.
Yeah.
So
nice.
super detailed. I have
Drive over your main water supply line and
There you
crack
go.
it as well, right?
Yeah.
And you, without a dumpster, you attract less folks that don't have any business being there, putting their trash in your dumpster.
Yes, so now the caveat to that is, it's been about a year and a half since we've done a major cleanup outside. And I just had a $200 fee and we picked up a table, a chair and a TV that didn't fit in the cart. Right, so the tenants are still, throwing things in the bushes and I did have to pay to get it cleaned up. So, but if you have a dumpster,
always a little.
and somebody moves out, where's their bed gonna go, right? It's might go in the dumpster.
My mattress.
Yeah. Hey, cool. Yes, Diana or Dina, if they want any closing wrap up or if there's any deals or anything.
Yeah. Well, we have
Yeah.
deals too, so.
Okay, well, I think it's probably time to move on to that. Unless anybody else, any final.
Yeah, I had one more thing I wanted to throw out there, which is a kind of question to everybody, which is how many in the last 2 years, how many offers have you made? Like at a guess? And then how many deals did you actually do?
Oh.
Like, or just throw it as a percentage if you can't do it that way.
Boy. I don't make a whole lot of offers. So when I make offers, it's usually they come together. I've had a couple deals fail on finances, like when you make an offer on multifamily, generally you don't have all their financials up front, right? So you got to make the offer and hope that they come in the way that you thought they were, and then when you get them, you're like, nope, and then you got to exit, right? But I've had a couple deals fail on the financials of the complex, and then one that we walked away from inspection. I would say I'm like, it's probably 70% pull through on offers written to closings. And over the last 2 years, we've added 76 units in 2 years.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily keep track of the offer. I don't make a ton of them, but I would say in the last year, I'm having less success with the offers. Because the market is very hot. I'm not necessarily willing to chase things. There's a lot of issues that are there. I think I just made an offer recently I was about to in the Chicago market, but it was just too much work for the numbers to work. So it's going down. I don't know the exact percentage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like competing with other offers. And so if it seems like a really high visibility deal, I don't tend to chase it and spend a lot of time because I work full time and I don't have time to do all of the work to try to do the due diligence and stuff like that in a hurry. I don't like that. So I don't do as many offers, kind of in your boat where I'm just kind of like, if it's a really good deal and I know it, I'll put an offer in, and I've had a few of my offers not accepted and you move on, whatever, but.
Yeah, I would say that especially in out of state, I've done a lot more offering than I've actually had accepted. I mean, and in many cases, it's been over asking price that so I think that it's worth saying that, like, do not get discouraged if your first couple of deals that you try for fall through. There were a lot of people here that said they're still kind of looking at this. Stick to your guns for what your criteria is, and ratchet that up slowly if you're like feeling like, okay, well, my bids aren't competitive, right? Like especially if you're already at ask and you're not competitive, like just ratchet that up slowly on your next deal. But try and just evaluate everything and know that you're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs before you get to that prince.
Good question. I like that. Cool, move on to
Let's look at deals.
Deals, yeah. Diana or Dina want to pipe up, or we'll leave that?
You guys want to pipe up, Dina or Diana, on these deals here?
Oh, yeah, I'll let Diana go ahead. She went ahead and prepared all of the information for everybody. So take it away, Diana.
So now we just have these few deals to go over with you guys. As we mentioned in the chat, we see a whole bunch of different deals come through from the agents, ranging from single family properties on the lower end, like you can see here in Lakeland, Florida, to larger commercial properties that go for over $1 million. So here we just have this cute little duplex in Lakeland, Florida from one of our agent partners, the asking price is 140, but I believe that she had listed that the suggested offer price is actually slightly lower. And we're estimating 10,000 in repairs. So with after repair rents of just about 1,400, you're looking at a monthly cash flow of $631, which is a cash on cash return of almost 20%. Just a sample deal of one of our smaller property offerings. And then for our next one, Cole, if you could advance the slide, please.
Oh, I did. Can you not see it?
Oh, there it goes. Sorry, I think there's a lag. So now we have this deal in Orange Beach, Alabama. This agent had submitted a deal that they thought would be a good short-term rental opportunity. So we have been working on our short-term rental calculator so that you can analyze deals in different angles. What may look like an okay buy and hold might be a better short-term rental or vice versa. So this is a 2-2 condo with access to a pool. The asking price is just under $250 with the current monthly gross income of just shy of $3,000. So you're looking at a monthly cash flow of $879 and a cash on cash return of 15%. And I do see Zayad's question in the chat. This session is being recorded, so you will have access to the recording. And if you would like to become a member of the inner circle, you'll get access to these deals plus many more. We have so many deals being submitted. Last month, we had over 200 deals submitted. So definitely a lot to check out. And then here
170 last month.
Sorry.
Yeah, quite, we're getting up there.
And then our last deal of tonight is from Portland, Oregon. This is a single family home, but it also has a additional unit in the backyard. So the asking price is $550 with after repair rents of $4,200 for both of the units. And this is looking at a cash flow of $916 with a cash on cash return of 7.35%. So we do have properties in more populous areas and like Portland, Seattle, different areas in Florida, and then also Midwest states as well. So we really appreciate you guys joining us tonight for our meetup. Thank you to those who could make it in person, and thank you to our panelist members. And we're really excited about those that were able to join us online. Hopefully we will see you joining us in the inner circle so that you can also get access to this deal flow and take advantage of our agent connections.
Yes, thank you, Donovan, Jesse, and Cody and Cole, and everybody that makes this happen for us. And for people that are interested in out-of-state investing. I hope that this has helped answer questions and break down some fears that you have to see some real people doing it. It is possible.
Awesome, great. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for coming live and in person. And thanks to everybody on Zoom. And I think that's wrapping us up for the night. Thanks so much.
Before everybody gets up, can I take a picture?
Oh yeah, let's get a photo, put it on. It's not true if it didn't happen on Facebook.
Have a great night, everyone.
Night, Diana, take care.
Bye.